The 52nd floor of Manhattan's gleaming Davidson Tower housed success and solitude in equal measure. Gabriel Diaz stood at his floor-to-ceiling window, gazing at the city lights bleeding into the winter dusk. His reflection stared back, at him. Impeccable suit, perfectly styled dark hair, and eyes that hadn't truly smiled in years. The quarterly report lay open on his mahogany desk, numbers that would make any CEO proud. Fusion Dynamics had exceeded expectations again, stock prices soaring to record highs. Yet Gabriel felt nothing but the familiar hollow ache in his chest as he contemplated another evening in his empty penthouse. "Mr. Diaz?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "The board meeting is starting in 5 minutes." "Thank you, Regina." His voice carried the practiced authority of a man who had mastered the art of appearing whole while feeling broken. The boardroom buzzed with anticipation as Gabriel delivered his presentation. Graphs pointed upward, profit margins expanded, and international markets opened their doors. His fellow board members nodded approvingly, their faces reflecting the satisfaction of another successful quarter. "Exceptional work, Gabriel." Richard Newman, the eldest board member, clasped his shoulder afterward. "You've turned this company into a powerhouse. Your father would have been proud." Gabriel managed a polite smile, the words stirring memories he'd rather forget. His father had always measured success in dollars and cents, never understanding that some voids couldn't be filled with money. The phantom pain of his ex-wife's wedding ring, absent from his finger for 2 years now, seemed to burn. The drive home felt longer than usual, his chauffeur navigating through the congested streets of Upper East Side. Gabriel's thoughts drifted to the medical report buried in his desk drawer at home. Asthenospermia, the clinical term for the condition that had destroyed his marriage and his dreams of family. Lauren's words still echoed in his mind. "I want children, Gabriel. A family. A life. Not just a successful husband who's married to his work." She'd left 6 months after the diagnosis, though their marriage had been crumbling long before that. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd buried himself in work to cope with their inability to have children, only to lose her to that same dedication. The elevator opened directly into his penthouse, a spacious monument to modern luxury and emptiness. Everything was exactly as he'd left it that morning, pristine, organized, and devoid of life. The cleaning service maintained the space with mechanical precision, but lately even they seemed to be slipping. He noticed water spots on the kitchen windows and a thin layer of dust on the rarely used dining table. His phone buzzed, another email from Human Resources about the household staff situation. The third cleaning service in 4 months had terminated their contract, citing his exacting standards as diplomatically as possible. Gabriel knew the truth. He'd become impossible to please, his perfectionism a shield against the chaos of emotions he refused to face. "Fine," he muttered, scrolling through the email. HR had already lined up interviews for a new household manager. The position offered an attractive salary and benefits. It had to, given his reputation for being a demanding employer. He approved the interviews with a quick reply, not bothering to review the candidates. That night, like most nights, Gabriel worked until exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him. The city lights painted shadows across his home office as he reviewed contracts and acquisition proposals. Work was simple. Work made sense. Work couldn't disappoint you, or leave you, or remind you of your failures as a man. The morning brought an unexpected disruption to his carefully ordered world. The elevator doors opened, and instead of the usual silence, he heard humming. The sound, bright and incongruous in his somber sanctuary, stopped him in his tracks. A woman stood in his kitchen, her back to him as she examined the coffee maker with focused curiosity. She wore simple black slacks and a crisp white blouse, her dark hair gathered in a neat bun. The humming continued, some cheerful tune he didn't recognize. "Excuse me." Gabriel's voice cut through the melody, sharp and cold. "Who are you, and how did you get in here?" She turned, and Gabriel felt something shift in the air. Her eyes were warm amber, filled with a light that seemed to push back against the penthouse's perpetual gloom. A smile touched her lips, genuine and unafraid. "Good morning, Mr. Diaz." I'm Clara Montero, your new household manager. HR approved my starting today. She spoke with quiet confidence, her voice carrying a subtle accent he couldn't quite place. I hope you don't mind. I was just familiarizing myself with the kitchen. Your coffee maker looks like it could use some attention. Gabriel stared at her, thrown off balance by her directness. Most new employees tiptoed around him, warned by his reputation. But Clara met his gaze steadily, that smile never wavering. I wasn't informed, he began, reaching for his phone. Check your email from last night, Clara suggested, turning back to the coffee maker. In the meantime, would you like a cup? I managed to get it working properly, and I make excellent coffee. The presumption should have irritated him. Instead, Gabriel found himself nodding, watching as she moved through his kitchen with unexpected grace. The aroma of fresh coffee began to fill the air, replacing the sterile emptiness that usually permeated the space. A quick check of his emails confirmed her story. HR had indeed sent him confirmation of Clara's hiring late last night, complete with glowing references and a background check. He'd apparently approved it during his work-induced haze. Here you are, Clara said, placing a cup before him. The coffee was the perfect temperature, the flavor rich and complex. I took the liberty of ordering proper beans. The ones in your pantry were, she paused diplomatically, perhaps past their prime. Gabriel took another sip, finding it harder to maintain his usual aloofness. Ms. Montero. Clara, please. Ms. Montero, he continued firmly. While I appreciate your initiative, I have certain standards for how things are done in my home. Of course, she agreed easily. I've reviewed the manual HR provided, though I hope you'll be open to some suggestions for improvement. For instance, the current cleaning schedule doesn't account for optimal natural light patterns, and the ventilation system needs maintenance that's not in the current rotation. Gabriel set down his cup, studying her with new interest. Most people withered under his scrutiny, but Clara remained poised, her expression open and professional. There was something about her presence that seemed to make the vast penthouse feel less empty, less cold. We'll discuss any proposed changes after a trial period, he said finally. For now, follow the existing protocols. Clara nodded, but her eyes sparkled with what looked suspiciously like amusement. Of course, Mr. Diaz. Will you be home for dinner tonight? The kitchen is fully stocked, and I make an excellent coq au vin. The question caught him off guard. He couldn't remember the last time anyone had cooked for him, or the last time he'd eaten dinner at home instead of at his desk. I have work to do, he said automatically. Work is important, Clara agreed, beginning to wipe down the coffee station with precise movements. But so is taking care of yourself. The dinner will be ready at 7 if you change your mind. As Gabriel stepped into the elevator, he caught a glimpse of Clara opening the windows, letting the morning sun stream into the space. The light seemed to follow her, transforming the familiar shadows of his home into something different, something alive. He straightened his tie, pushing away the unsettling feeling that his carefully constructed world of isolation was about to change. Clara Montero was just another employee, he told himself. She would either adapt to his ways or leave, just like all the others. But as the elevator descended, he could still taste the coffee on his lips, still feel the warmth of the morning sun, and still hear the echo of her humming in his mind. The board meeting ran later than expected, and Gabriel found himself staring at his phone as the clock struck 7:15 p.m. Clara's words from that morning echoed in his mind. Dinner would be ready at 7. He hadn't committed to being there, hadn't even planned on returning home at a decent hour. Yet something made him close his laptop and gather his things. The elevator ride up to his penthouse felt different. Usually he dreaded the silence that awaited him, but tonight unfamiliar scents wafted down the hallway, rich, savory aromas that stirred long-forgotten memories of family dinners from his childhood, before his father's ambition had consumed their lives. When the doors opened, soft classical music floated through the air. The lighting was gentle, a stark contrast to the harsh fluorescence he typically worked under. Clara moved efficiently through the kitchen, her back to him as she arranged something on a plate. You're supposed to follow existing protocols, Gabriel said by way of greeting. Though his usual edge was somewhat dulled by curiosity, Clara turned, unsurprised by his presence. The protocols didn't specify anything about music or lighting, Mr. Diaz. She gestured to the dining table, which had been transformed. A proper place setting awaited him, complete with pressed linens and polished silverware. I hope you're hungry. He should have retreated to his office. Should have maintained the boundaries that kept his life orderly and predictable. Instead, Gabriel found himself moving toward the table, drawn by the incomprehensible normalcy of the scene. The Coco van needs 5 more minutes to rest, Clara informed him, her movements precise as she poured him a glass of water. Would you like wine? I found an excellent Burgundy in your collection. Gabriel noticed she'd organized his wine rack, which had been gathering dust since Lauren left. You've been busy, he observed, neither approving nor condemning. I like to understand the spaces I work in, she replied, bringing over a basket of fresh bread. The steam rising from it carried the scent of herbs. Your home has good bones, but it needs to breathe. Something about her choice of words made him uncomfortable. It's a living space, not a living thing. Clara's smile held a hint of challenge. Everything's alive in its own way, Mr. Diaz. Even spaces carry energy. Right now, yours is... She paused, considering her words carefully, holding its breath. Before he could respond, she returned to the kitchen and began plating their meals. Gabriel watched her work, struck by the graceful efficiency of her movements. There was something almost therapeutic in the way she handled each component of the dish, treating the simple act of serving dinner as if it were an art form. You don't need to eat with me, he said as she set a plate before him. Would you prefer I didn't? Her question was genuine, free of the passive aggression he'd come to expect from others. The truthful answer surprised him. No, he admitted, watching as she took the seat across from him. The table had always seemed absurdly large for one person. With 2, it felt more proportionate. The first bite silenced any further attempt at conversation. The dish was extraordinary, complex flavors melding together in perfect harmony. Gabriel couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten something prepared with such care. This is very good, he conceded after several bites. Clara accepted the compliment with a simple nod. Food tastes better when shared, she said, then added with a hint of mischief. And when it hasn't come out of a takeout container. Gabriel found himself fighting back an unexpected smile. I assume you've seen my collection. 3 drawers, full of delivery menus? Yes. Though I'm curious about why you keep them all, especially since most are from places that closed months ago. The question hit closer to home than she could have known. Those menus were remnants of his life with Lauren. Restaurants they discovered together, places that held memories he couldn't quite bring himself to discard. Force of habit, he replied shortly, his tone closing the subject. Clara seemed to sense the shift in his mood. She deftly changed topics, discussing her plans for reorganizing the household maintenance schedules. Her ideas were logical, efficient, and clearly well-researched. Gabriel found himself engaged despite his initial resistance, impressed by her thorough understanding of the space's needs. The current cleaning service is adequate, he pointed out when she mentioned improvements to their routine. Adequate isn't excellent, Clara countered, and you don't strike me as someone who settles for adequate in any other area of your life, Mr. Diaz. The observation was uncomfortably accurate. You seem very certain of your assessments for someone who's been here less than a day. I'm good at reading people and spaces, she said simply. It's part of why I'm excellent at my job. Speaking of which, she rose and returned with a delicate dessert, a perfect panna cotta garnished with fresh berries. Sometimes the smallest indulgences make the biggest difference. The dessert was light yet satisfying, much like the entire meal had been. Gabriel realized he'd eaten more in this one sitting than he typically did in an entire day. You didn't have to go to all this trouble, he said as Clara began clearing the plates. It wasn't trouble, she replied. Besides, cooking helps me think. I've been planning how to tackle the guest rooms tomorrow. They need a complete overhaul. Gabriel tensed. The guest rooms are fine. They're shrines, Clara said quietly, her voice gentle but firm. Preserved moments in time that are gathering dust. A home shouldn't have spaces that are afraid to change. The comment struck too close to the truth. Those rooms remained exactly as they'd been when Lauren left, down to the half-empty bottle of perfume on the vanity. He'd kept them locked, telling himself it was practical to have guest rooms ready, knowing he never intended to have guests. The guest rooms are off limits, he said, his voice hard. Focus on the main living areas. Clara met his gaze steadily. As you wish, Mr. Diaz, but remember, dust doesn't just settle on furniture. It settles on memories too, making them heavier to carry. She turned away, continuing her cleanup with the same quiet efficiency she'd shown all evening. Gabriel retreated to his office, but found himself unable to focus on work. Clara's words kept echoing in his mind, along with the realization that this was the first time in years he'd had a real conversation over dinner. Hours later, when he finally emerged to get water, he found the kitchen spotless. A small note sat by the coffee maker. Breakfast at 7:30. The morning light is beautiful in the dining room. The handwriting was neat and graceful, like everything else about Clara. Gabriel picked up the note, intending to crumple it. Instead, he found himself placing it carefully in his wallet, telling himself it was just to remember the breakfast time. But as he lay in bed that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that Clara Montero had somehow seen past his carefully constructed walls in just one day. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, he found himself wondering what she'd prepare for breakfast, and whether the morning light was really as beautiful as she claimed. His last conscious thought before drifting off was that his home smelled different, like fresh bread and possibility instead of the sterile emptiness he'd grown accustomed to. 3 weeks into Clara's tenure, Gabriel noticed the changes. They were subtle at first: fresh flowers in the entryway, the gentle scent of lavender in his bedroom, windows that seemed to capture more sunlight than he remembered possible. But it wasn't just the physical transformations that unsettled him. His own routines had shifted, almost without his awareness. He found himself coming home for dinner more often, telling himself it was simply practical to eat the meals already prepared. The morning coffee ritual had become something he actually looked forward to, though he'd never admit it aloud. Clara would already be in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared his perfectly brewed cup, often accompanied by freshly baked pastries that made his usual protein bar seem particularly unappetizing. This morning was different. When the elevator doors opened, silence greeted him instead of the usual quiet music or gentle humming. The kitchen was spotless but empty. No coffee brewing, no breakfast waiting. A faint sense of disappointment surprised him. He'd grown accustomed to their morning exchanges. "Clara?" he called out, his voice echoing in the quiet space. No answer. Gabriel checked his phone for any messages about her absence. Nothing. He was about to call HR when he heard a muffled sound from the direction of the guest rooms, the ones he'd explicitly declared off limits. Anger flared as he strode down the hallway. The door to the main guest suite was ajar and he could hear movement inside. He pushed it open, ready to remind Clara of boundaries and consequences. The words died in his throat. Clara sat on the floor amid piles of clothing and books. Her usual composure cracked. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and in her hands she held a small blue sweater, Lauren's favorite, the one she'd left behind. "I'm sorry," Clara said quietly, not looking up. "I know I shouldn't be in here, but the heating vent was making strange noises, and when I came to check," she gestured at the chaos around her. "Sometimes things need to break before they can heal." Gabriel should have been furious, should have fired her on the spot for this invasion of his private space. Instead, he found himself sinking down to sit on the edge of the bed, his legs suddenly unable to support him. "She left it on purpose," he said, surprising himself. "The sweater said she had too many memories in it to take it with her." Clara finally looked up at him, her eyes full of understanding rather than pity. "And you've been keeping it prisoner here, along with all these other memories." I don't need psychological analysis from my housekeeper, Gabriel snapped, but the words lacked their usual bite. No, Clara agreed, carefully folding the sweater. But maybe you need someone to tell you that it's okay to let go, not just of things, but of the weight you've been carrying. She paused, then added softly, I know something about holding on to pain too long. The vulnerability in her voice made him look at her more closely. There were shadows behind her usual warmth, hints of her own battles that she kept carefully hidden. What happened? He found himself asking. Clara was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the pattern on the sweater. I was married once, she finally said. He was a doctor, brilliant, dedicated, everything I thought I wanted. We tried for years to have a baby. Multiple treatments, all our savings, nothing worked. He blamed me, said I was broken. One day I came home to find him gone. All that was left was a note saying he'd found someone who could give him what he wanted. The parallel to his own story hit Gabriel like a physical blow. I'm sorry, he said, the words feeling inadequate. A small, sad smile touched Clara's lips. Life has a way of breaking our hearts so we can learn how to put them back together differently. But first we have to stop living in rooms full of ghosts. She stood up, straightening her clothes with practiced efficiency. I'll pack everything up, donate what can be used. The room needs new life, not old memories. Wait, Gabriel said, surprising them both. I'll help. They spent the next 2 hours sorting through the remnants of his past life. Each item they handled seemed to carry its own weight of memory. Books Lauren had loved, clothes she'd left behind, photographs from happier times. Clara worked methodically, creating organized piles while giving Gabriel space to process each decision. Tell me about her, Clara said as they folded clothes for donation. Not the ending. Tell me about the beginning. Gabriel found himself talking about things he'd buried deep, meeting Lauren in college, their whirlwind romance, the dreams they'd shared. Clara listened without judgment, asking gentle questions that helped him see patterns he'd missed before. You know what's strange? He said, holding up a framed photo from their honeymoon. I can't remember the last time we were truly happy together. Even before the diagnosis, something was missing. Sometimes love isn't enough, Clara replied. Sometimes we're so busy trying to be who we think we should be. We forget to be who we are. A comfortable silence fell between them as they continued working. Gabriel noticed how Clara handled each item with respect, treating these pieces of his past as something precious rather than something to be discarded. When they finally finished, 3 large boxes stood ready for donation and the room felt lighter somehow. Clara opened the windows, letting in fresh air and sunlight. I'll have the cleaning service come tomorrow, she said. After that you can decide what you want this room to become. Gabriel looked around the space, seeing possibilities instead of memories for the first time. Thank you, he said quietly. Not just for this, but for... He gestured vaguely, unable to articulate the shift he felt. Clara's warm smile returned, though her eyes still held traces of her earlier emotion. Sometimes we all need someone to help us clean out our emotional closets. She checked her watch. Now, I believe we both missed breakfast. How do you feel about brunch? Despite the heavy morning, Gabriel found himself smiling slightly. As long as it's better than my protein bars. Mr. Diaz, Clara said with mock seriousness, everything is better than your protein bars. Come on, I'll teach you how to make a proper omelet. In the kitchen, Clara moved with her usual grace, but Gabriel noticed something different in their interaction. The careful professional distance had shifted, replaced by something more comfortable. She showed him how to crack eggs with one hand, laughed at his clumsy attempts, and somehow made the simple act of cooking feel like therapy. As they sat down to eat their creation, his slightly messy, hers perfect, Gabriel realized this was the first time in years he'd felt truly present in a moment. Not thinking about work or the past or his failures, just sitting in his sun-filled kitchen, eating brunch with someone who had somehow slipped past his defenses. You're not just a housekeeper, are you? He asked suddenly. Clara took a sip of her coffee, considering her answer. I'm whatever people need me to be. Sometimes that's a housekeeper. Sometimes it's someone who understands what it's like to rebuild after everything falls apart. She met his eyes. What do you need me to be, Mr. Diaz? The question hung between them, loaded with unspoken possibilities. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed, a reminder about an afternoon meeting he couldn't miss. You should go, Clara said, standing to clear the plates. The world doesn't stop turning just because we're having an emotional breakthrough over omelets. Gabriel nodded, gathering his things. At the elevator, he turned back. Clara? She looked up from the dishes. Yes? I'd like to learn to cook, if you're willing to teach me. Her smile lit up the room. Tomorrow morning, 7:30, we'll start with the basics. As the elevator descended, Gabriel realized that for the first time since Lauren left, he was looking forward to something. The thought should have scared him. Instead, it felt like taking a deep breath after being underwater for too long. The kitchen timer chimed as dawn painted the New York skyline in shades of gold. Gabriel stared at the mess before him. Flour dusted across the counter, eggshells scattered like broken promises, and what was supposed to be a simple breakfast souffle looking decidedly less than perfect. Well, Clara said, fighting back. A smile. At least you didn't burn it this time. 4 weeks into their morning cooking lessons, and Gabriel had discovered an uncomfortable truth. Excellence in the boardroom didn't translate to mastery in the kitchen. Yet something about these early morning sessions with Clara's patient guidance and gentle teasing made him persist despite his failures. I followed your instructions exactly, he protested, examining the deflated souffle with a CEO's critical eye. Clara moved beside him, close enough that he could smell her subtle perfume, something fresh and citrusy that reminded him of spring mornings. Cooking isn't just about following instructions, she said, her voice soft. It's about feeling the moment, understanding the ingredients. Like anything worth doing, it requires presence. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the kitchen seemed to shrink around them. Gabriel became acutely aware of how close they were standing, of the warmth radiating from her presence, of the way her tongue darted out to moisten her lips as she looked away. The elevator chime shattered the moment. Mr. Diaz? Regina's voice carried from the foyer. I'm sorry to come up, but you're not answering your phone and the Beijing meeting was moved up. Clara stepped back smoothly, professional mask sliding perfectly into place. I'll clean up here, you should go. Gabriel hesitated, suddenly, reluctant to leave their morning sanctuary. The souffle will be a good lesson in humility, Clara finished with a small smile. Go, run your empire. We'll try again tomorrow. The day passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls, but Gabriel's thoughts kept drifting back to that moment in the kitchen. He found himself remembering small details, the flour smudge on Clara's cheek that he'd wanted to brush away, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed at his culinary disasters, the subtle ways she'd touch his hand to correct his knife technique. Mr. Diaz? Regina's voice pulled him back to the present. The acquisition paperwork needs your signature. He nodded, forcing himself to focus on the documents before him. The Newman Group acquisition had been in the works for months, a deal that would significantly expand Fusion Dynamics' market share. Richard Newman himself had pushed for the merger, seeing it as his legacy before retirement. Also, Regina added hesitantly, Mrs. Newman called. She's hosting their annual charity gala next weekend and insisted you attend. She mentioned bringing a +1 would be appropriate. Gabriel's jaw tightened. The Newmans had been close, friends with Lauren's family, and he knew exactly what Catherine Newman was trying to do. Send my regrets. Sir, with the acquisition? Regina left the implications hanging. They both knew declining would be politically unwise. Fine. Send the RSVP. Just me. Later that evening, Gabriel found himself walking into his penthouse, earlier than usual. The smell of cooking drew him to the kitchen where Clara was preparing dinner while talking on her phone in rapid Portuguese. She smiled when she saw him, holding up one finger as she finished her conversation. "You're home." "Early," she observed after ending the call. "Everything okay?" "Just tired of meetings," he replied, watching as she moved efficiently around the kitchen. "What are you making?" "Feijoada, my grandmother's recipe. Good for the soul." She gestured to the pot simmering on the stove. "Though not as ambitious as this morning's soufflé attempt." Gabriel groaned. "I thought we agreed never to mention that again." "Actually, you'll be happy to know I saved it." Clara's eyes danced with mischief. "It made an excellent doorstop." A laugh escaped before he could stop it, the sound foreign to his own ears. When was the last time he'd really laughed? Clara seemed to have a way of drawing out parts of himself he'd forgotten existed. "Here," she said, handing him a wooden spoon. "Stir while I chop the collard greens, and tell me what's really bothering you." He wanted to deny it, maintain the professional distance that had started to blur. Instead, he found himself talking about the Newman Gala, the acquisition, the complicated web of social and business obligations he usually navigated with cold efficiency. Clara listened as she worked, asking occasional questions that revealed her sharp understanding of corporate dynamics. "So this Catherine Newman," she said finally, "she's trying to play matchmaker?" "She's been doing it since Lauren left," Gabriel admitted. "She means well, but you're not ready." Clara's voice was gentle. "Or maybe you're ready, just not for what she has in mind." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Clara busied herself with the greens, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. "Come with me," Gabriel said suddenly. Clara's knife stilled. "Excuse me?" "To the gala. As my—" He hesitated, then finished lamely. "+1. "That would be inappropriate," Clara said carefully, though he noticed she hadn't immediately refused. "I'm your employee." "You're more than that." The words came out before he could stop them. "You're a friend." Clara set down her knife, finally looking at him. "Friends don't look at each other the way you've been looking at me, Mr. Diaz." The honesty in her statement hit him like a physical force. They'd been dancing around this growing tension for weeks, maintaining the pretense of employer and employee, while something else bloomed in the spaces between their words. "How do I look at you?" he asked, his voice low. Clara stepped closer, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her amber eyes. "Like you're afraid I might be real. Like I might be something you can't control or predict or file away in one of your perfectly organized spreadsheets." "Clara," she pressed, a finger to his lips, the touch sending electricity through his body. "Don't, not yet. There are lines we shouldn't cross, complications we need to consider. I won't be another regret in your life, Gabriel." It was the first time she'd used his first name, and something shifted in the air between them. Clara stepped back, creating physical distance while their emotional proximity threatened to overwhelm them both. "The feijoada needs another hour," she said, her voice steady despite the flush in her cheeks. "Why don't you change and get comfortable? We can eat in the dining room like civilized people who remember their proper roles." Gabriel knew he should agree, should retreat to his office and rebuild the walls that had protected him for so long. Instead, he found himself saying, "Or we could eat in the kitchen, like friends." A soft smile touched Clara's lips. "Like friends," she agreed. "But you're still going to have to find another date for the gala." As Gabriel changed out of his suit, he caught his reflection in the mirror. Something was different in his face, a softness around the eyes, a slight upward tilt to his mouth that he hadn't seen in years. Clara was changing him, whether he wanted to admit it or not. The question was he ready for where those changes might lead? The Newman mansion glittered against the evening sky, a beacon of old money and social expectations. Gabriel adjusted his bow tie for the third time as he stepped out of his car, already regretting his decision to attend alone. The past week had been a careful dance with Clara, both of them hyper-aware of each other, maintaining professional distance while the air between them crackled with unspoken possibilities. "Gabriel, darling." Catherine Newman's voice cut through his thoughts. She descended the grand entrance steps, elegant in midnight blue, her social smile firmly in place. "I was so disappointed to hear you'd be coming alone tonight." "Catherine," he kissed her cheek perfunctorily. "The house looks lovely." Yes?" She linked her arm through his, steering him toward the entrance. "You know who else looks lovely tonight? Charlotte Peterson. She's just made partner at her law firm and she's been asking about you." Gabriel suppressed a sigh. "Catherine, don't Catherine me in that tone. It's been 2 years since Lauren, darling. You can't keep living like a monk." She patted his arm. "Charlotte's by the fountain. Do try to be charming." The ballroom was a sea of New York's elite, old money mingling with new deals being made between champagne toasts. Gabriel navigated the crowd with practiced ease, exchanging pleasantries and avoiding Catherine's not-so-subtle attempts at matchmaking. His phone buzzed, a message from Clara. "Your lunch meeting for Monday needs to be rescheduled," the client called with a conflict. He found himself smiling at the screen, imagining her in his kitchen, probably experimenting with some new recipe, while managing his schedule. The thought of her there, making his sterile penthouse feel like a home, created a warmth that all the champagne in the room couldn't match. "That must be some message," a feminine voice observed. Charlotte Peterson stood before him, stunning in emerald green. "I don't think I've ever seen you smile at a phone before." Gabriel quickly schooled his features. "Charlotte, you look well, and you look like you'd rather be anywhere else." Her directness was refreshing after an evening of social niceties. "Want to escape to the terrace? I could use some air, and you look like you could use a friend who isn't trying to marry you." "Off." The terrace provided a welcome respite from the stuffiness inside. Charlotte leaned against the railing, studying him with lawyer's eyes. "So," she said after a moment, "who is she?" Gabriel stiffened. "I don't know what you mean." "Please. I've known you since college, Gabriel. You've got that same look you had when you first met Lauren, like you're trying to solve a puzzle that keeps changing shape on you." His phone buzzed again. "Clara. Made pasta from scratch tonight, didn't burn anything, you'd be proud or suspicious." Charlotte caught his involuntary smile. "Ah, definitely someone. Does she make you happy?" "It's complicated. It always is." Charlotte sipped her champagne. "You know what your problem was with Lauren? You both tried so hard to be perfect that you forgot to be real. Don't make that mistake again." Inside, the orchestra struck up a waltz. Gabriel's thoughts drifted to Clara, wondering if she danced. He'd never seen her anything but perfectly composed, even in the kitchen. What would she look like here under the crystal chandeliers? "Go home," Charlotte said suddenly. "What?" "Whatever's making you smile at your phone, or whoever, that's where you want to be. So go. I'll tell Catherine you had an urgent business call." Gabriel hesitated. "The acquisition? We'll be fine. Richard likes you, and more importantly, he respects you. Stop using business as an excuse to hide from life." She shooed him away. "Go. Be happy. God knows someone should be." The drive home felt both endless and too short. Gabriel's mind raced with possibilities and complications. Clara was his employee. There were boundaries, professional ethics to consider. But Charlotte's words echoed in his head. Stop trying to be perfect. The elevator opened to soft music and the smell of fresh pasta. Clara stood at the kitchen island, hair loose around her shoulders, wearing casual clothes he'd never seen before. Soft pants and an oversized sweater that made her look younger, more vulnerable. She looked up, surprised. "You're home early. I thought these things usually went until midnight." "They do." He stepped closer, drawn to her warmth. "What are you still doing here?" "Experimenting with recipes. I thought," or she gestured to the pasta maker, "I thought you might be hungry when you got home. These events never have real food. The domesticity of the moment struck him, coming home to someone who cared enough to wait up, to cook, to make sure he was taken care of. When was the last time anyone had done that for him? "Dance with me," he said suddenly. Clara's eyes widened. "Mr. Diaz." "Gabriel," he corrected. "Please, just dance with me." The music playing was something soft and jazzy. Clara hesitated for a moment before stepping into his arms, her hand warm in his. They swayed together in his kitchen, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. "This is a bad idea," Clara whispered, but she didn't pull away. "Probably," he agreed, drawing her closer. She fit perfectly against him, as if she'd been designed to fill the spaces in his life he hadn't known were empty. "We can't." "I know." His hand slid to the small of her back. "But right now, I don't want to think about can't or shouldn't. Right now, I just want to dance with you in my kitchen and pretend we're just two people who found each other." Clara's breath caught as she looked up at him. The music wrapped around them, creating a bubble where titles and positions didn't matter. Gabriel could feel her heart racing against his chest, matching the erratic beat of his own. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. Clara's eyes filled with a mix of longing and fear. "I should. But you won't." "No," she whispered. "God help me, I won't." The kiss was inevitable, like gravity or dawn or the tide coming in. Clara's lips were soft, yielding yet somehow in control. She tasted like possibility and danger and home all at once. Gabriel pulled her closer, years of loneliness and want pouring into the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, reality began to seep back in. Clara stepped away, her professional mask slipping back into place even as her lips still showed evidence of their kiss. "This can't happen again," she said, though her voice trembled. "I need this job, Gabriel. I need the stability, the references. I can't be the employee who slept with her boss." "You're more than that." "Am I?" She gathered her things. Movements, quick and efficient. "Right now I'm the housekeeper you kissed in your kitchen after a charity gala. Tomorrow I'll be the housekeeper who makes your coffee and manages your schedule. That's all I can be." "Clara, wait." But she was already gone, the elevator doors closing behind her, leaving Gabriel alone in his kitchen with the taste of her still on his lips and the weight of complication heavy on his shoulders. He touched his mouth, remembering the feel of her, the way she'd melted into him for that brief, perfect moment. The pasta maker still sat on the counter, evidence of her care, her presence in his life. His phone buzzed one final time. "I'm sorry. See you Monday, Mr. Diaz." The formality in those words felt like a door closing. Gabriel stared at the message, understanding for the first time just how much he stood to lose if he couldn't find a way to bridge the gap between what they were and what they could be. Monday arrived with the subtle brutality of a surgeon's knife. Gabriel stood in the elevator, his heartbeat accelerating with each ascending floor. The weekend had been an exercise in restraint, dozens of drafted messages to Clara, all unsent, all insufficient to bridge the chasm their kiss had created. The doors opened to silence. No music, no humming, no breakfast aromas, just coffee in a thermal carafe and a precise schedule for the day laid out on his desk. Clara herself was nowhere to be seen. He found her note underneath the carafe. "In meetings with contractors about the ventilation system, your schedule is updated. C." The carefully typed C felt like a statement. Gone was the flowing signature he'd grown accustomed to. Even her handwriting maintained professional distance now. The day unfolded in a series of carefully orchestrated near misses. When Gabriel returned from his morning meetings, Clara had just left for errands. When she returned with dry cleaning, he was on a conference call. They moved through his space like planets in separate orbits, their gravitational pull evident but deliberately ignored. It was Richard Newman's unexpected visit that finally forced them into the same room. "Gabriel!" Richard's booming voice filled the penthouse as he stepped off the elevator. Hope you don't mind me dropping by. Catherine insisted I bring these proposals personally. Clara appeared from the kitchen, professional smile firmly in place. Mr. Newman, welcome. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? Ah, you must be the famous Clara. Richard's eyes twinkled. Catherine hasn't stopped talking about your feijoada since she got the recipe from the catering staff. She's convinced you're some sort of culinary genius in hiding. Gabriel watched as Clara's composure flickered slightly. The recipe is my grandmother's, she said smoothly. I'll bring you both some coffee. Actually, Richard settled into one of the living room chairs. I'd love to try that feijoada myself if you're willing. Been ages since I had proper Brazilian food. I don't think, Gabriel started. It would be my pleasure, Clara interrupted. I was planning to make some today anyway. It'll be ready by dinner time if you'd like to join us, Mr. Newman. The U.S. hung in the air like a challenge. Gabriel met her eyes for the first time that day, finding something unreadable in their depths. Excellent. Richard clapped his hands. Now, about these proposals. The afternoon crawled by in a haze of contract discussions and acquisition details. Richard proved to be more perceptive than his jovial exterior suggested, his questions precise and probing, but Gabriel found his attention constantly drawn to the kitchen, where Clara worked with focused intensity, the sounds and smells of her cooking a constant reminder of her presence. At one point, during a break in their discussions, Richard moved to the kitchen for water. Gabriel overheard his conversation with Clara. You know, Richard said quietly, I've known Gabriel since he was a boy. His father and I built our companies together, but I've never seen him like this. Like, what, sir? Clara's voice was carefully neutral. Alive, present. The man I saw at the gala leaving early with that look in his eyes, that wasn't the Gabriel I've known these past few years. That was a man rushing towards something, not away from it. Mr. Newman, just an observation, my dear. Sometimes the best investments aren't the ones that look good on paper. They're the ones that make your heart race a little when you think about the possibilities. By 6, the rich aroma of feijoada filled the penthouse. Clara had set the dining table with her usual precision, but Gabriel noticed small touches that spoke of care, fresh flowers, the good wine glasses, the soft lighting that made the space feel intimate despite its size. This is extraordinary, Richard declared after his first bite. Catherine was right about you, Clara. You're wasted as a housekeeper. I enjoy what I do, Clara replied, but Gabriel caught the slight tension in her shoulders. And what did you do before this? Richard asked innocently. Catherine mentioned something about your previous experience. Clara's fork paused halfway to her mouth. I worked in hotel management for several years. In Brazil, and then here in New York. At the Carlton, wasn't it? Richard's eyes sparkled with interest. Fascinating place. They had that terrible scandal a few years back. Something about embezzlement in the executive offices. Gabriel watched as all color drained from Clara's face. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her fork. Yes, she said quietly. I was there during that time. Clara, Gabriel started, but she was already standing. Excuse me, she said. I need to check on dessert. The kitchen door swung shut behind her with quiet finality. Richard watched her go with an expression that suggested he'd found exactly what he was looking for. Interesting woman, he mused. Did you know she was the one who uncovered the embezzlement scheme? Turned in her own supervisor from what? I hear. Cost her the job, of course. Hotels can be funny about whistleblowers even when they're in the right. But she saved them millions. Gabriel stared at the kitchen door, pieces falling into place. Clara's insistence on stability, her fierce protection of professional boundaries, her fear of complications, it all made sense now. Why are you telling me this? He asked Richard. Because, my boy, sometimes we need to understand where people have been to appreciate where they might be willing to go. Richard stood, gathering his papers. The acquisition paperwork all looks good. We'll announce it next week, but Gabriel? Yes? Don't let fear of complications keep you from something real. God knows I've seen enough corporate marriages to know the difference between a good investment and a perfect fit. He headed for the elevator, then paused. Oh, and tell Clara that Catherine expects that dessert recipe too, whatever it is. After Richard left, Gabriel found Clara in the kitchen methodically putting away leftovers. Her movements were precise, controlled, but he could see the tension in every line of her body. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked softly. "About the Carlton?" She didn't turn around. "It wasn't relevant to my position here." "Clara, don't." She finally faced him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Don't make this more than it is. I'm your housekeeper. That's all I can be, all I should be. Anything else? I can't risk everything again. I won't." "You didn't just uncover the scheme, did you? You were involved with someone there." A single tear escaped, tracking down her cheek. "My supervisor. Michael. I thought he loved me. Turns out he was just using me to access the accounts I managed. When I found out what he was doing," Gabriel stepped closer, aching to wrap her in his arms. "You did the right thing." "Did I?" Her laugh was bitter. "I lost everything. My job, my reputation, my ability to trust. Do you know how hard it is to get references when you're the person who brought down your entire department? How many doors close when people hear your name?" "Clara, I need this job, Gabriel. I need the stability, the clean record, the chance to rebuild. I can't let what happened Friday night change that. I won't let my heart destroy my life again." She turned back to the leftovers, her movements more frantic now. Gabriel watched her, understanding finally hitting him with the force of revelation. It wasn't just professional boundaries she was protecting. It was her heart, her future, her chance at redemption. "What if," he said carefully, "there was a way to have both?" Clara stilled. "Don't, please. Look at me." She turned slowly, vulnerability naked on her face. "I'm not Michael," Gabriel said softly, "and you're not just my housekeeper. You never were." The air between them crackled with possibility and fear. Clara's hands trembled as she wiped them on her apron. "I should go," she whispered. "It's late." This time, Gabriel didn't try to stop her. But as the elevator doors closed between them, he made a decision. If Clara needed stability and security to feel safe, he would find a way to give her both, without asking her to sacrifice her heart in the process. The question was, would she let him? The Newman acquisition dominated the next 2 weeks, filling Gabriel's days with meetings and his nights with paperwork. Clara maintained her professional distance with practiced perfection, though he noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She seemed tired more often, her usual energy somewhat dimmed. Twice he caught her steadying herself against the kitchen counter, her face pale. "Are you feeling all right?" he asked one morning, watching her pick at a piece of toast. Unusual for someone who typically enjoyed her breakfast. "Just a bit under the weather," Clara replied, not meeting his eyes. Nothing to worry about. But worry he did, even as he respected the careful boundaries she directed between them. Their interactions had become a masterclass in unrequited gestures. Coffee appeared on his desk just before he realized he needed it, his favorite. Meals materialized on days he had difficult meetings, and somehow, his shirt cuffs were always perfectly pressed right when he had to make an impression. In return, he found himself leaving small signs of his concern. Ginger tea on the counter when he heard her morning sickness, a standing order for fresh flowers to brighten the kitchen, a new ergonomic mat by the stove when he noticed her discomfort while cooking. It was Charlotte who finally provided the breakthrough he needed. "You're not listening to a word I'm saying, are you?" she asked during their lunch meeting, her lawyer's eyes sharp with amusement. Gabriel blinked, realizing he'd been staring at his phone, waiting for Clara's usual midday message about his schedule. "Sorry. The acquisition." "Please," Charlotte cut him off. "I've seen you handle 3 acquisitions while reciting quarterly reports. This is about her, isn't it? The one from the gala night?" He considered denying it, but Charlotte had known him too long. "It's complicated. It always is," She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. Tell me. So he did, laying out the situation in the same methodical way he'd present a business problem. Charlotte listened intently, her legal mind clearly working through the implications. Let me guess, she said when he finished. She's worried about professional complications, reputation damage, and losing her position? Among other things. And you've been approaching this like a CEO, looking for ways to protect her position while pursuing what you want? Gabriel frowned. What's wrong with that? Nothing if you're negotiating a merger, everything if you're trying to build trust with someone who's been burned before. Charlotte leaned forward. You keep trying to solve the professional problem, but that's not the real issue. She's not afraid of losing her job, Gabriel. She's afraid of losing herself. The truth of it hit him hard. So what do I do? Stop trying to fix it like a business problem. Start showing her who you are beyond the CEO she works for. Charlotte's smile turned mischievous. And maybe consider that there are other ways to structure a working relationship that don't involve direct employment. The idea took root, growing as Gabriel returned to the office. He spent the afternoon in deep discussion with his legal team, exploring options and restructuring possibilities. By evening, he had the beginnings of a plan. He arrived home earlier than usual, finding Clara in the kitchen. She looked particularly pale today, and he noticed she'd switched from her usual coffee to chamomile tea. You should see a doctor, he said by way of greeting. Clara startled slightly, not having heard him approach. I'm fine, just a stomach bug. A bug that's lasted 2 weeks? I didn't realize you were keeping track, she said carefully, maintaining her professional tone despite the personal nature of his concern. Gabriel moved closer, noting how she subtly shifted away. Clara, don't. She held up a hand. We talked about this. No, you talked, I listened. Now it's my turn. He placed a folder on the counter between them. I have a proposition for you. Clara eyed the folder warily. Mr. Diaz. Fusion Dynamics is expanding its corporate hospitality division, he continued, ignoring her attempt to retreat into formality. We're looking to develop internal food service and event management programs across all our properties. The position requires someone with both culinary expertise and corporate management experience. Understanding dawned in Clara's eyes. Gabriel, no. The role reports directly to the board, not to me. Complete professional autonomy, full benefits, and a salary that reflects both your experience and the scope of responsibility. He pushed the folder toward her. You'd be building something from the ground up, Clara. Something that's yours. She didn't touch the folder. You can't just create a position because of whatever this is between us. I'm not. The expansion. Plans have been in development for months. Charlotte, my lawyer friend from the gala, she helped identify the legal structure. Everything's above board, properly documented, and fully legitimate. He paused, then added softly, I'm not. Michael, Clara, I won't ask you to compromise yourself. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she finally reached for the folder. Why are you doing this? Because you deserve a chance to rebuild on your own terms. Because you're too talented to spend your life managing one person's household. And because... He stopped, watching her face carefully. Because I want to see who we could be without the weight of employer and employee between us. She opened the folder, her eyes scanning the documents inside. Gabriel could see the moment she reached the salary figure. Her breath caught slightly. This is too much. It's market rate for the position and experience required. He stepped closer, encouraged when she didn't back away. Clara, look at me. She raised her eyes to his, and he saw the battle there. Hope warring with fear, desire with caution. I can't guarantee this will work out between us, he said honestly. But I can promise you that your position will be secure regardless of what happens personally. The contract is ironclad, the role is real, and your qualifications are exactly what we need. Clara pressed a hand to her mouth, and for a moment Gabriel thought she might cry. Instead, she rushed suddenly to the sink, barely making it before she was sick. Clara! He was beside her instantly, holding her hair back with one hand while the other supported her waist. That's it. I'm calling my doctor. No, she gasped between heaves. I'm fine. Just give me a minute. Gabriel ignored her, already pulling out his phone. That's when he noticed something. The slight swelling of her abdomen under his supporting hand. The pattern of her symptoms over the past weeks, her switch from coffee to tea. Clara must have felt him freeze because she straightened slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes as she registered where his hand rested. Oh my God, she whispered. Clara. Gabriel's voice was hoarse. When was your last? She shook her head, panic rising in her face. This isn't possible. I can't be. You can't. But they both knew. The signs had been there for weeks, ignored or attributed to stress and emotion. Now, with his hand still resting protectively over her stomach, the truth was impossible to deny. I'll get a test, she said quickly, pulling away. It's probably nothing, just stress and poor eating habits and… Clara, he caught her arm gently. Stop running. She looked up at him, tears spilling over. You don't understand. This can't be happening. Your condition, things change, he said softly, thinking of all the ways his life had transformed since she entered it. Sometimes the impossible becomes possible when you least expect it. Clara's laugh held an edge of hysteria. This isn't one of your kitchen lessons, Gabriel. This would change everything. Maybe everything needs to change. He reached for her again, and this time she didn't pull away. Take the job offer. Take the pregnancy test. But please, stop running from this, from us. She stood, trembling in his arms, the folder forgotten on the counter, their carefully maintained professional boundaries crumbling in the face of this unexpected possibility. I'm scared, she whispered against his chest. I know. He pressed a kiss to her hair. But you don't have to be scared alone. Not anymore. The waiting room of Dr. Rebecca Chen's office felt too small for the magnitude of the moment. Gabriel sat rigidly in an ergonomic chair, his hand clasped tightly with Clara's, both of them staring at the 3 positive pregnancy tests they'd taken the night before, now safely stored in Clara's purse. It has to be a mistake, Clara whispered for the 100th time. The doctors said, We'll know soon enough, Gabriel replied, his voice steadier than he felt. Inside, his mind raced with equal parts terror and hope. The door opened, and Dr. Chen emerged, her friendly face professionally neutral. Mr. Diaz, Ms. Montero, please come in. Her office was warm and welcoming, with none of the sterile coldness Gabriel associated with his previous fertility consultations. Dr. Chen settled behind her desk, reviewing the preliminary tests they'd done earlier that morning. Well, she said finally, looking up with a slight smile. I can confirm that you are indeed pregnant, Ms. Montero. Approximately 8 weeks based on these results. Clara's hand tightened in Gabriel's. But how is this possible? Mr. Diaz's condition… Asthenospermia isn't always permanent, Dr. Chen explained, pulling up some charts on her computer. Mr. Diaz, you've been on a treatment regimen for the past year, correct? Gabriel nodded. Experimental protocols, dietary changes, stress reduction. He glanced at Clara, realizing how much of that stress reduction had been due to her presence in his life. Well, sometimes these treatments can lead to partial recovery of sperm motility. It's rare, but not unprecedented. Dr. Chen's smile widened. But that's not all I have to tell you. She turned her monitor around, showing them an ultrasound image. Congratulations. You're having quadruplets. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Gabriel heard Clara's sharp intake of breath, felt her hand go slack in his. 4? Clara's voice was barely audible. 4 babies? Yes. Dr. Chen pointed to the screen. All 4 embryos are developing normally. It's actually not uncommon with previously low fertility patients. When conception does occur, multiple pregnancies are more likely. Gabriel stared at the screen, at the 4 tiny shapes that somehow represented his impossible future. Are they all healthy? From what we can see at this stage, yes, However, Dr. Chen's tone grew serious. Multiple pregnancies, especially quadruplets, carry significant risks. We'll need to monitor you very carefully, Ms. Montero. You'll need to make some significant lifestyle changes. Clara nodded numbly, her free hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. Gabriel noticed she was pale again. I think, Clara started, then swallowed hard. I think I need some air. They thanked Dr. Chen and scheduled follow-up appointments, Clara clutching the packet of prenatal information and dietary guidelines the doctor provided. In the elevator down to the parking garage, neither spoke. The silence continued in the car, heavy with unspoken thoughts and fears. Finally, at a red light, Gabriel turned to her. Talk to me, Clara. She stared straight ahead, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. 4 babies, Gabriel. 4. I'm going to get huge. I won't be able to work. I'll have to leave the position before I even started. Everything we just figured out. Hey. He pulled the car into a nearby park, turning off the engine. Look at me. Clara turned, her face a mixture of joy and terror. This changes everything. Yes, it does. He reached over to wipe her tears, but not in the way you think. The job offer still stands. We'll modify it for your condition. You can start building the program, hire staff, create the foundation. By the time you need to step back, you'll have a team in place. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's terrifying and complicated and... He laughed suddenly, the joy finally breaking through his shock. And it's absolutely miraculous. Clara's hand found her stomach again. 4 miracles. +1. When she looked confused, he clarified. You're the first miracle. The one who brought life back into my world even before this happened. Fresh tears spilled, but this time accompanied by a watery smile. I don't know how to do this, Gabriel. Any of it. The job, the babies, us. Neither do I. He leaned over to kiss her softly. But we'll figure it out together. They sat in the park for a while longer, watching families play and children run across the grass. Gabriel could see Clara's mind working, planning, and worrying in equal measure. Move in with me, he said suddenly. Clara's head snapped around. What? Not as my housekeeper, as my partner, the mother of my children. He turned to face her fully. The penthouse has plenty of room. We can convert the guest rooms into nurseries. You'll need help during the pregnancy. And afterward, Gabriel, slow down. But he could see the idea taking root in her mind. We barely know each other outside of employer and employee. I know that you hum when you cook. I know you touch the herbs in the kitchen garden every morning like you're saying hello. I know you take your coffee with 1 sugar unless you're stressed, then you add another half spoon. I know you're brave and principled and stronger than you give yourself credit for. Clara's breath hitched. Gabriel? And I know that I've been falling in love with you since the first morning you fixed my coffee maker and told me the beans were past their prime. The confession hung between them as enormous as the news of their quadruplets. Clara stared at him, her amber eyes wide with emotion. I'm not expecting you to say it back, he continued quickly. I know this is overwhelming. The babies, the job offer, everything, but I want you to know where I stand. What I'm offering isn't just practical support. It's everything. All of me. If you want it. Clara was quiet for so long that Gabriel began to worry he'd pushed too far. Then so softly he almost missed it, she whispered, I stopped buying coffee beans. What? At my apartment 2 months ago. I stopped buying coffee beans because... She took a shaky breath. Because I realized I only wanted coffee if it meant sharing it with you in the morning. Gabriel felt something in his chest expand, like a long-held breath finally released. Is that a yes to moving in? It's a yes to trying. Clara's hand found his. But we do this right. I take the job, modified for the pregnancy. I pay my own way until we figure out what we are together. And we take it 1 day at a time. Deal. He kissed her again, letting himself linger. This time, when they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. Though I think we should tell HR about the change in your living arrangements before the rumors start. Clara laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. Pretty sure 4 babies will start plenty of rumors regardless. Let them talk. Gabriel's hand joined hers over her stomach, marveling at the tiny lives growing beneath. We know what's real. As they drove home and Gabriel realized he already thought of the penthouse as their home, Clara dozed in the passenger seat, exhausted from the emotional morning. He found himself making mental lists, rooms to convert, specialists to consult, security measures to implement. But mostly he thought about the impossible gift he'd been given. Not just the babies, but the chance to build something real with the woman who'd brought warmth back into his world. 4 babies. The thought was still overwhelming, but watching Clara sleep, her hand protectively curved over her stomach even in rest, Gabriel knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. It wasn't the life either of them had planned, but sometimes the best things in life came from impossible moments and imperfect timing. 4 miracles plus 1. A new family, born from coffee grounds and cooking lessons and the courage to reach for happiness even when it seemed impossible. The first signs of trouble came during week 12 of Clara's pregnancy. The morning sickness that had plagued her early weeks transformed into something more serious, landing her in the emergency room with severe dehydration. Gabriel paced the hospital corridor, his usual composed demeanor cracking with each passing hour. Mr. Diaz? Dr. Chen appeared, looking concerned but not alarmed. Clara's stable now. The IV fluids are helping, but this is a wake-up call. Carrying quadruplets puts enormous stress on the body. She needs complete bed rest. Gabriel ran a hand through his disheveled hair. She won't like that. No, she won't, Dr. Chen agreed. But if we want to give all 4 babies the best chance, it's necessary. She's also showing early signs of gestational hypertension. We need to monitor her closely. Inside the hospital room, Clara lay pale against the white sheets, her small frame making the hospital bed seem enormous. The sight of IV lines snaking from her arm made Gabriel's chest tight with fear. Don't look so worried, Clara said weakly. I'm fine. You're not fine. He sat beside her, taking her hand. You collapsed in the middle of a meeting. A very productive meeting, she protested. I'd almost finished the staffing proposal for the new hospitality division. Clara, Gabriel's voice held a note of desperation. The company can wait. You need to rest. She turned her face away, but not before he caught the shimmer of tears. I can't just lie in bed for months, Gabriel. I'll go crazy. You can and you will. He softened his tone, thumb stroking her palm. Think of it as your new full-time job, growing our 4 little miracles. A small smile touched her lips despite her frustration. You're getting better at this whole emotional manipulation thing. I learned from the best. Who was it that convinced me to try making soufflés at 5 in the morning? The reminder of their cooking lessons brought a fuller smile to her face. Their relationship had evolved in that kitchen, and now everything was changing again. The next few days brought more changes than either of them had anticipated. Gabriel converted his home office into a comfortable bedroom suite for Clara, complete with a specialized medical bed and monitoring equipment. The guest rooms were slowly transforming into nurseries, though they'd agreed to wait on the major renovations until they knew more about the babies' genders. Clara tried to adapt to bed rest with her usual grace, but Gabriel could see how much the enforced idleness wore on her. She'd set up a mobile workstation in bed, continuing to develop plans for the hospitality division between medical appointments and necessary rest. You know, she said one evening as Gabriel brought her dinner, we haven't really talked about names yet. He settled beside her on the bed, careful not to jostle her. 4 names, it seems like a lot of pressure. 4 first names, 4 middle names. Clara's hand rested on her growing belly. They'll need strong names, names with meaning. Like Clara? He smiled, bright and clear. Or Gabriel, God is my strength. She picked at her food, a sign that nausea was bothering her again. We could look at family names. Gabriel tensed slightly. My family. I know. Clara covered his hand with hers. But they're part of who you are. Even the complicated parts. Before he could respond, Clara's face suddenly lit up. Oh, quick, give me your hand. She pressed his palm against her stomach, and Gabriel felt it, the tiniest flutter of movement. His breath caught. Is that... They're dancing, Clara whispered, tears in her eyes. All my little dancers. The moment was interrupted by Clara's phone buzzing. Gabriel reached for it, frowning at the display. It's a Brazilian number. Clara's face paled. It's my mother. I haven't told her yet. About the babies? About any of it. The job change, us moving in together. She bit her lip. In my family, things are done differently. Marriage first, then babies. My mother is very traditional. Gabriel considered this. Then we'll do something about that. What do you mean? He stood, crossing to the dresser where he'd hidden something weeks ago, waiting for the right moment. The small velvet box felt warm in his palm. Gabriel? Clara's voice held a note of warning. What are you doing? Not what you think. He returned to the bed, opening the box to reveal a delicate ring. This isn't a proposal. Not yet. It's a promise. The ring caught the light, simple but elegant, with a small pearl instead of a diamond. It was my grandmother's, he explained. The only person in my family who understood that love was more important than ambition. She gave it to me before she died, said to save it for someone who made me see the world differently. Clara stared at the ring, tears spilling over. Gabriel, I'm not asking you to marry me today. We're doing this at our own pace, remember? But I want you to have this as a promise, that whatever comes next, we're in it together, that when the time is right, when we're both ready, I'll do this properly. Her hands trembled as he slipped the ring onto her right hand. A promise, for the future, not a commitment for the present. It's beautiful, she whispered. Like you. He kissed her softly. Now, should we call your mother back? Clara's laugh was watery, but real. You don't know what you're getting into. Brazilian mothers are a force of nature. I think I can handle it. I managed to win over their daughter, didn't I? The phone call was exactly as chaotic as Clara had predicted. Her mother's rapid-fire Portuguese filled the room even through the speaker, alternating between joy and scolding, excitement and concern. Gabriel couldn't understand most of it, but he could read Clara's expressions, relief, love, and lingering anxiety. When Clara finally ended the call, she was exhausted but smiling. She's booking a flight. Says she needs to be here to make sure everything is done properly. Define properly? Traditional Brazilian recipes for pregnancy, special teas, probably some kind of blessing ceremony. Clara yawned. She'll try to take over everything. Let her. Gabriel helped Clara settle more comfortably against the pillows. You focus on growing our dancers. Let the rest of us take care of you. As Clara drifted off to sleep, Gabriel watched the ring glinting on her finger. It wasn't a traditional engagement, but then nothing about their relationship had been traditional. They were building something unique, something that defied the usual rules and timelines. His phone buzzed with an update from the contractors working on the nurseries. Paint samples, furniture options, security system upgrades. Their world was transforming as rapidly as Clara's body. 4 babies, 1 high-risk pregnancy, and a love story that had begun with coffee and cooking lessons. Gabriel touched Clara's stomach gently, feeling another flutter of movement. Dance gentle, he whispered to his unborn children. Your mama needs her rest. In her sleep, Clara smiled, her hand automatically covering his. They had challenges ahead, medical concerns, family expectations, the balance of work and impending parenthood. But for now, in the quiet of their room, with the promise ring catching the evening light, everything felt possible. Helena Montero was a force of nature wrapped in 5 feet of Brazilian determination. She swept into the penthouse like a tropical storm, bringing with her the scent of home-cooked meals and decades of maternal wisdom. Within hours of her arrival, The kitchen transformed into a traditional Brazilian pharmacy of sorts, herbs hanging to dry, special teas brewing, and ancient family recipes spread across the counter. "My," Clara protested from her medical bed, where she'd been confined for the past month. "You don't need to take over everything." "Quiet, Fila." Helena bustled around the room, hanging fresh eucalyptus and lavender. "Your blood pressure is too high for arguments. Where is your Gabriel? He needs to learn these remedies." As if summoned, Gabriel appeared in the doorway, looking somewhat overwhelmed by his future mother-in-law's whirlwind presence. "Mrs. Montero." "Helena," she corrected firmly. "You are the father of my grandchildren. No formality." She pressed a cup of strong-smelling tea into his hands. "For Clara. Good for the babies. My grandmother's recipe." Clara shot Gabriel an apologetic look as he brought her the tea. At 20 weeks, her belly had grown impressively, making her seem almost fragile against the pillows. The monitoring equipment beeped steadily, a constant reminder of the precariousness of their situation. "It's not so bad," Gabriel murmured, sitting beside her. "Your mother's cooking is definitely better than the hospital food you've been tolerating." "Just wait," Clara warned, sipping the tea. "Soon she'll have you learning Portuguese lullabies and traditional dancing for the babies. Whatever makes them strong and healthy." He touched her stomach, feeling the now familiar movements of their quadruplets. The latest ultrasound had revealed 2 boys and 2 girls, each growing steadily despite the risks. Helena watched them from the doorway, her expression softening. "Amor verdadero," she said quietly. "True love. It shows in how you look at each other." Before either could respond, Clara's monitor began beeping more rapidly. Her face paled, hand clutching her belly. "Something's wrong." Gabriel was already calling Dr. Chen's emergency line, while Helena rushed to her daughter's side, murmuring soothing Portuguese prayers. The next few hours became a blur of medical terminology and concerned faces as Clara was rushed to the hospital. "Preeclampsia," Dr. Chen explained in the consultation room. "Her blood pressure is dangerously high and we're seeing signs of protein in her urine. At 20 weeks with quadruplets, this is extremely serious." "What are our options?" Gabriel asked, trying to maintain his CEO composure while his heart threatened to beat out of his chest. "We need to admit her for the remainder of the pregnancy. Round-the-clock monitoring, complete bed rest, and medication to control the preeclampsia. Even then..." Dr. Chen hesitated. "The chances of carrying all 4 babies to a viable age are uncertain." Helena, who had been quietly translating medical terms into Portuguese on her phone, looked up sharply. "My daughter is strong. My grandchildren are fighters. We pray, we hope, we fight." Back in Clara's hospital room, the gravity of their situation settled over them. Clara lay connected to even more monitors than before, her face etched with worry not for herself but for their unborn children. "I'm sorry," she whispered when they were finally alone. "I should have been more careful. Should have..." "Stop." Gabriel took her hand, the promise ring cool against his palm. "You've done everything right. We knew this would be high risk. But what if..." Her voice broke. "What if we lose them? Then we face it together." He kissed her forehead. "But let's not borrow trouble. Your mother's right. They're fighters. Like their mama." Over the next few days, a routine developed. Gabriel split his time between the hospital and managing his company remotely, while Helena transformed Clara's hospital room into a haven of comfort. She hung small crystals in the window. For protection, she insisted, filled the air with the scent of calming herbs, and kept a constant stream of positive energy flowing through stories and songs. One evening, Gabriel returned to find Helena teaching him traditional Brazilian prayers for unborn children. Clara was asleep, but her monitors showed stable readings. A small victory. "Sit," Helena commanded, patting the chair beside her. "We talk." Gabriel complied, recognizing the tone of a mother with something important to say. "When Clara told me about the Carlton, about that man who broke her heart, I wanted to cross the ocean to hurt him." Helena's English was better, than she usually let on. My daughter, she is like me, passionate, stubborn, afraid to trust after being betrayed. But you, she studied him intently. You have given her more than love, you have given her safety to be herself. She's given me more, Gabriel admitted. She made me live again when I'd forgotten how. Helena nodded approvingly. This is why I give you this. She pressed something into his hand, a small worn medallion. It was my mother's, and her mother's before. Saint Gerard, protector of mothers and unborn children. For Clara. Gabriel stared at the ancient medallion, feeling the weight of family history and hope in his palm. Thank you. You will marry her? It wasn't really a question. When she's ready, when we're both ready. Good. Helena patted his hand. Now learn this prayer. The babies, they know their father's voice. As Gabriel stumbled through the Portuguese words, Clara stirred in her sleep. The monitors showed a flutter of movement from the quadruplets, as if they were indeed responding to their father's voice. Days turned into weeks. Clara's condition stabilized enough for her to begin limited work from her hospital bed, coordinating with her newly hired team via video calls. Gabriel noticed how she lit up during these meetings, her natural talent for organization and management shining through despite her circumstances. They're calling me the ghost boss, she told him one afternoon, amused. Apparently, I'm very mysterious, appearing only on screens to give direction and disappearing again. The ghost boss who's growing 4 future executives, Gabriel teased, earning a playful swat. But their lighter moments were increasingly interrupted by medical concerns. Each week brought new challenges, monitoring the baby's growth, adjusting, medications, watching for any signs of deterioration. Dr. Chen began discussing contingency plans for early delivery if Clara's condition worsened. Through it all, Helena remained their anchor, her unwavering faith and practical support keeping them grounded. She moved seamlessly between traditional remedies and modern medicine, creating a bridge between the world of their heritage and the reality of their situation. Late one night, as monitors beeped quietly and Helena dozed in a corner chair, Clara tugged Gabriel close to her belly. Listen, she whispered. They're having a party. Sure enough, he could feel an unusual amount of movement, little feet and hands pushing against Clara's stretched skin. Each kick and turn showed up on the fetal monitors, creating a symphony of beeps and waves. Dancing to their own rhythm, he observed, thinking of how this whole journey had begun with Clara's humming in his kitchen. Like us, Clara smiled, then winced as a particularly strong kick caught her ribs. Though I hope they have better timing than their parents. Gabriel laughed softly, careful not to wake Helena. I don't know. Our timing brought us here, didn't it? 4 miracles and a mother-in-law who's determined to turn me Brazilian. 5 miracles, Clara corrected, echoing his words from months ago. Don't forget the first one. He kissed her gently, feeling the babies dance between them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, supported by the strength of family both old and new, bound by love that had bloomed in unexpected soil and grown strong enough to weather any storm. At 28 weeks, the calm they'd carefully maintained shattered like glass. Gabriel was in the middle of a board meeting when his phone lit up with Helena's number. One look at his face, and Richard Newman immediately adjourned the meeting. Go, Richard said simply. Family first. The drive to the hospital was a blur of red lights and silent prayers. Gabriel found Helena in the hallway outside Clara's room, clutching her rosary with trembling hands. Her water broke. Helena said, her accent thicker with stress. 2 of the babies. They are in distress. Dr. Chen emerged from Clara's room, her face grave. Mr. Diaz, we need to perform an emergency C-section. The preeclampsia has become severe, and baby C and D are showing decreased heart rates. But it's too early, Gabriel protested, even as he knew they had no choice. Every hour we wait increases the risk to both Clara and the babies. Dr. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. We've given her steroids to help with the baby's lung development, but we need to act now. Inside the room, Clara lay surrounded by medical equipment, her face wet with tears, but determined. "Gabriel," she whispered as he rushed to her side. "I'm sorry." "Don't." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her trembling lips. "You've done everything perfectly. They're just eager to meet us." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. All four at once. Typical of our children to make a dramatic entrance. The medical team began preparations, moving with controlled urgency. Helena pressed her medallion of St. Gerard into Clara's hand, murmuring prayers in Portuguese. Gabriel found himself joining in, the words feeling less foreign after weeks of practice. "Mr. Diaz," a nurse approached. "We need to prep Ms. Montero for surgery. You can join us in the operating room after you change into scrubs." The next few minutes were a whirlwind of activity. Gabriel changed mechanically into blue scrubs, his mind racing with every worst-case scenario his analytical brain could conjure. When he returned to Clara's side in the operating room, she reached for his hand immediately. "Talk to me," she pleaded as the anesthesiologist began his work. "Tell me about something good." Gabriel swallowed hard, forcing his voice to steady. "Remember our first cooking lesson? When I nearly set off the fire alarm trying to make toast?" Clara's laugh was shaky but real. "You've come so far. Last week you made perfect scrambled eggs. Thanks to you." He stroked her hair, trying to ignore the controlled chaos around them. "You've given me so much, Clara. A future I never thought I'd have, a family I never dreamed possible." "Blood pressure dropping," a nurse called out. "Doctor." Chen's voice was sharp with command. "Beginning incision now." Clara's grip on Gabriel's hand tightened. "Sing them the lullaby," she whispered, "the one Helena taught you." So Gabriel sang softly in broken Portuguese, his voice trembling but determined, as the medical team worked to bring their children into the world. Each minute felt like an eternity, marked by beeping monitors and urgent medical terminology. "First baby," Dr. Chen announced. "Baby A, it's a boy." A tiny cry filled the room, impossibly small but full of fight. Gabriel felt tears sliding down his face as he watched his son being whisked away to waiting specialists. "Baby B, girl." Another cry, this one softer but equally determined. The mood in the room shifted suddenly. Baby C's heart rate is dropping. Someone called out. "Clara?" Gabriel noticed her grip had weakened. "BP continuing to fall," a nurse reported urgently. "Stay with me," Gabriel pleaded, both to Clara and the baby still fighting to enter the world. "Stay with us." "Baby C boy." Dr. Chen worked with incredible speed. "Baby D girl." The last two cries were fainter, and the room erupted into coordinated emergency response. 4 teams of specialists worked on 4 impossibly tiny babies, while another team focused on Clara, whose blood pressure had become dangerously low. "Mr. Diaz, you need to step out now," a nurse urged, pulling him away. "No. Let them work," she insisted. "Your children need you too." In the hallway, Helena waited with a group of nurses. Together, they watched through windows as each baby was stabilized in their own incubator. Gabriel learned their weights like a prayer. 2.4 pounds, 2.3 pounds, 2.1 pounds, 2.2 pounds. So small, yet each one fighting with the combined strength of their diverse heritage. Hours passed in a blur of medical updates and paperwork. The babies were moved to the NICU, each one critical but stable. Clara remained in recovery, receiving transfusions and close monitoring. Finally, near dawn, Dr. Chen found them in the NICU waiting room. "She's asking for you." Clara looked impossibly fragile in the recovery room, but her eyes were clear and determined. "Our babies?" "All stable," Gabriel assured her, his voice rough with emotion. 4 tiny fighters, just like their mama. I need to see them." "Soon," Dr. Chen promised. "Once you're stronger, they're getting the best care in our NICU." Helena, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. They need names. Names with power, with meaning. Names to make them strong. Clara's eyes met Gabriel's. They had discussed names but hadn't finalized their choices, superstitiously waiting until they were closer to term. Now, looking at each other in the golden light of dawn, they knew it was time. For the first boy, Clara said softly, Miguel. She squeezed Helena's hand. After your father. Our fierce firstborn, Gabriel agreed. And for our first girl, Lucia, they said together. Light hope, the dawn after their longest night. The second boy, Gabriel continued, Thomas. The name held echoes of his grandmother's wisdom, her belief in love over ambition. And our youngest princess, Clara smiled tiredly, Isabella. Miguel, Lucia, Thomas, and Isabella. Helena tested the names, nodding approval. Strong names, beautiful names. As if responding to their naming, the monitors showed Clara's vital signs strengthening. Outside, the sun rose over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of hope. Rest, Gabriel told Clara, kissing her gently. Build your strength. Our children need their mother. And their father, Clara murmured, already drifting off. Don't forget. 5 miracles. Gabriel stood watch as she slept, holding her hand while Helena kept her vigil by the window, her prayers a soft counterpoint to the medical equipment's steady beeping. They had survived the longest night of their lives, but the journey was far from over. 4 tiny babies fought for strength in the NICU while their mother recovered from bringing them into the world. Yet somehow, watching Clara sleep peacefully for the first time in months, Gabriel felt nothing but gratitude. They had created something extraordinary, not just 4 new lives, but a family that bridged cultures and defied medical odds, bound together by love that had begun with a simple cup of coffee and grown into something profound enough to create miracles. 6 months after the quadruplets' dramatic arrival, Gabriel stood in his transformed penthouse kitchen, carefully preparing 4 bottles while a pot of coffee brewed. The early morning light filtered through windows that had once seemed cold and empty but now held the warm glow of home. The baby monitor on the counter crackled with soft whimpers, Isabella stirring first as usual. The youngest of the quadruplets was also the most vocal, always eager to start the day. Within moments, her siblings would join the morning chorus. I'll get her, Clara's voice came from behind him. She looked tired but radiant, finally fully recovered from the difficult pregnancy and delivery. You finished the bottles. You should be sleeping, Gabriel protested, though he knew it was futile. Clara had insisted on resuming some semblance of their morning routine as soon as the babies were home from the NICU. I smell coffee, she said simply, kissing him as she passed. Besides, I miss our mornings together. The past 6 months had been a blur of hospital visits, sleepless nights, and countless small victories. Each baby had faced their own challenges. Miguel's struggles with breathing, Lucia's jaundice, Thomas's feeding difficulties, and Isabella's early weight concerns. But day by day, hour by hour, they had grown stronger. Helena had been their rock, practically moving into the penthouses, guest suite, and orchestrating a small army of nurses and specialists. Her combination of traditional wisdom and fierce determination had seen them through the darkest moments. Now, finally, all 4 babies were home and thriving. The penthouse had transformed into a wonderland of baby equipment, medical supplies, and the organized chaos that came with quadruplets. Yet somehow, in the midst of it all, Gabriel and Clara had found their rhythm. The sound of Clara's humming drifted through the baby monitor, followed by Isabella's happy gurgle. Gabriel smiled, remembering how that same humming had first caught his attention all those months ago. Your coffee, Mr. Diaz, Clara teased as she returned with Isabella, who was already eyeing the bottles with interest. Thank you, Ms. Montero, he replied, playing along with their old routine. Or should I say, Director of Corporate Hospitality. Clara had officially started her role 2 months ago, working primarily from home while the babies stabilized. Her team had already revolutionized Fusion Dynamics' approach to corporate services, bringing the same warmth and attention to detail that had first transformed Gabriel's life. Speaking of which, she settled Isabella into her feeding chair. The new training program launches next week. We're implementing those cooking classes you inspired. I inspired? Gabriel raised an eyebrow as he tested a bottle's temperature. Teaching stressed executives the therapeutic value of cooking. Though maybe we'll skip the 5 a.m. soufflé lessons. The other monitors came alive with 3 distinct cries. Gabriel gathered the remaining bottles while Clara went to fetch their other children. These moments, the quiet coordination, the shared responsibilities, had become his favorite part of their new life. Miguel came first, his dark eyes serious as he studied the room. At 6 months, he already showed signs of his father's contemplative nature. Lucia followed, all smiles and reaching hands, while Thomas dozed against Clara's shoulder, still fighting his morning wake-up call. I got the confirmation this morning, Clara said as they settled into their feeding routine. All 4 have gained enough weight to meet their milestones. Gabriel felt his throat tighten with emotion. After months of weighing, measuring, and worrying, this victory felt monumental. We should celebrate. Already planned, Clara smiled. Your grandmother's ring is feeling a bit loose on my right hand. Maybe it's time to move it to the left? The quiet proposal, so perfectly Clara in its simplicity, made Gabriel's heart skip. Are you sure? We agreed to wait until we were ready, she finished. Until we knew who we were beyond employer and employee, beyond the complications of our past. She looked around at their children, at the home they'd built together. I think we know now. The moment was interrupted by Thomas spitting up on Gabriel's shirt, a common occurrence that no longer fazed either of them, as they worked together to clean up baby and father. Their movements synchronized by months of practice, Gabriel felt the rightness of it all. Later that evening, after Helena had shooed them out for a proper date, while happily settling in for grandmother duty, they found themselves back where it all began, in the kitchen. Remember your first coffee here? Clara asked, running, her hands over the now weathered countertop. When you found me criticizing your beans? Gabriel pulled her close, breathing in the familiar citrus scent of her hair. I thought you were the most presumptuous employee I'd ever met. And now? Now I think you're the best thing that ever happened to me. You and our 4 little miracles. Clara turned in his arms, her eyes shining. So, Mr. Diaz, about that ring. He reached into his pocket where he'd been carrying his grandmother's ring for weeks, waiting for the right moment. This time he sank to one knee properly. Clara Montero, you walked into my life pretending to be just a housekeeper, but you became my heart. You gave me 4 beautiful children, taught me to cook without burning water, and showed me that the impossible becomes possible when you add just the right ingredients. He held up the ring. Will you marry me? Yes, she whispered, then laughed as he slipped the ring onto her left hand. Though, technically, I proposed first. Their kiss was interrupted by Helena's voice over the baby monitor. Ah, finally, now we can plan a proper wedding. The babies need legitimate parents. They broke apart laughing, knowing their private moment had probably been carefully orchestrated by the woman who had become so much more than just Clara's mother. We should head back up, Clara said, though she made no move to leave Gabriel's arms. Isabella will be hungry soon. 1 more minute, Gabriel murmured, holding her close. In the quiet of their kitchen, with the city lights twinkling beyond the windows and the sounds of their family drifting down from above, he felt the fullness of his journey. From a man who had locked away his heart after loss and disappointment, to a father of 4 and soon-to-be husband, from a cold penthouse to a warm home filled with love and chaos and possibility. All because a presumptuous housekeeper had dared to tell him his coffee beans were stale. What are you thinking? Clara asked, touching his face gently. That some things are meant to be, even if they don't follow the expected path. He kissed her softly. That love shows up in unexpected places, between coffee grounds and cooking lessons. Between impossible diagnoses and quadruplet surprises, she added with a smile. The baby monitor erupted with Isabella's familiar cry, followed by Helena's loving complaints in Portuguese. Reality called, as it always did, but now it was a reality they welcomed. Messy, complicated, and more beautiful than either of them had dreamed possible. Hand in hand, they headed back to their family, the promise ring now an engagement ring, the future stretching bright before them. They had created something extraordinary together, not just 4 miraculous babies, but a love story that defied odds and expectations. As they stepped into the elevator, Clara began to hum their baby's favorite lullaby. Gabriel joined in, his voice harmonizing with hers as they ascended to their transformed world. They had come full circle, back to the simple truth that had started it all. Sometimes the greatest miracles begin with a simple cup of coffee and the courage to let love change everything. At what point in your life have you had to choose between professional security and true love? Like Clara, who risked her stability by allowing herself to love Gabriel, what difficult decision did you make following your heart? And what was the result of that choice? Leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below, letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.